Hello everyone, welcome to the discussion of Class 7, Chapter number 5, Rulers and Building. In this chapter, we are going to learn that how, in medieval period, rulers built private and public buildings like forts, palaces, tombs, temple, mosque, tanks, and etc. Also, the main highlight and the objective of the chapter is to convey the sense of the building material, skills, styles used to build the waterworks and the places of worship during the medieval era. Also, the focus is going to be to understand the engineering and construction skills, artisanal, organization, and resource required for these magnificent construction work. First, let's focus on the most beautiful aspect of the chapter, that is the monument, which has been erected during the medieval era. We all know about the first Delhi Sultan, Qutbuddin Aibak. He started the construction of the Qutub Minar in 1199. The balconies were built outside and under the arches, and geometric designs were carved out. Under each balcony were two bands of inscription in Arabic, and because of the surface of the minar was curved and angular, the work of inscribing became more complicated, difficult, and it needed an expert worker or an artisan to do or present its skills on. Two kinds of structures were built during the ancient and the medieval times. Structures such as forts, palaces, gardens, residences, and tombs. They were safe and well protected. Also, these forts and palaces and all were specially for the royalty or for the ruler and his close immediate family. The other kind of structures which were made during this time were the grand temples, mosques, tanks, wells, and caravansarays. Also, the bazaars were made for the public activity. So broadly, we can say that there were two kinds of structures which were made. One for the public and the other was for the private ceremonies and the private places for the rulers and the emperor. It is important to understand during the time of 15th to let's say 16th century, the skill of constructing something was extremely very difficult. In that time, there was no such modern equipment which we have today, like cement, maybe crane, and the other things. So, the construction of a such enlarged and magnificent monument was something which we can categorize under the word phenomenal. Let's focus on the next topic, that is engineering skills, construction. Monuments showcase the technological skill of the time they built. Example, the superstructure. The superstructure refers to a building which is built above the ground level. Like today, we have floors, which is very common to us. The first floor, multiple story building, the multi-story houses and all. In the earlier time, construction of the floor above the ground level structure was something big, and it needed resources and skills. Although architects built more windows, rooms, and doors, the basic method of building them were horizontal beam was placed across the two vertical column, which was known as travaillate structure, and it in fact was used till some time before. These travaillate structures were used to build many temples, mosques, and state wells between the 8th and 13th century. Two new technological developments were seen in the 12th century. The arcuate, the curved structure, where the weight of the superstructure was carried by the arches. High quality limestone cement, when mixed with stone chips, formed a harder concrete and used highly during that age. Remember, the engineering skill and the construction we are talking about in this chapter is solely focused between the 11th century and the 13th century. Coming on to the next thing, temple, mosque, and tanks. All these three things are the structures which belong to the public spaces. It is not just for the private affairs or the private use by the king or the emperor, but it is something which was there for the use of the local public. Temple and mosque are the beautifully built buildings which are there for worship. Also, these temples and mosques are the showcase or the demonstration structure for the wealth and power of the patron. In majorly cases, these temple and mosques were financed and built on the order of the ruler. For example, let's say Raj Rajeshwara temple, which was built by the king Raja Raja Deva to show how devoted he is to Lord Raja Rajeshwaram. Kings took God's name as it was auspicious and showed that his status was equal to the god. And also, through the rituals, it shows that one God, who is there on earth, is the king. This is the reason why they used to take name of gods after them. They were the sole representative of the godly kingdom on the planet Earth. The demonstration of the temples, let's say these buildings, were the clear example of the godly kingdom. Large temples were built by the kings and the smaller ones were built by the nobles or the subordinate kings, just to show their power, their wealth, and their status in the society. The Muslim kings or the Bashas, we commonly refer them as, they were not claiming that they are the incarnation of God, like mostly which was presented by the Hindu rulers. They were the shadow of God. They like to call themselves as that. These sultans portray themselves as the shadow of God. For example, in the inscription of a Quwwatul Islam mosque in Delhi, which explains that God chose Alauddin as a king because he had the quality of the Moses and Solomon. Now, these Moses and Solomon were the messengers of God, Allah. So, they portray themselves like that, the shadow. It also says that the greatest lawgiver and the architect is God himself, who created the world out of the chaos and introduced the order and balance to the earthly people. New dynasty come with new power and emphasize on their relation with the god. As the ruler offered the patronage to the learned and the pious men and transformed their capital into the religious and cultural center. The more the religious and the more culturally rich the capital is, the more the positivity of and the just rule of a king will be reflected in the society, and same will be written in the chronicles by the historians. The rule of the king in the ancient time was considered as an age of plenty, where all resources were available in the plenty, especially water. And so the king built the tanks and the reservoir to provide clean water to their subjects, as it is the sole responsibility of the king to provide the basic amenities and facilities to their subject. In order to do that, the tanks and reservoirs were constructed during the early time. For example, Iltutmish built the Hawza Sultani King's Reservoir in Delhi. It is a large reservoir outside. Many times, these water sources were built as a part of the mosque or a temple, right adjacent to the worship place. Now let's talk about the destruction of temples. We just had understood about how temples and these mosques were the structure of demonstration of power and wealth of the ruler or the person who has sponsored it or who has ordered for the construction. Whenever the battle happened between the two kings, always the victor tried to squash, tried to destroy the other king's monuments which were constructed under his rule. These temples were always being targeted as they were the symbol of the king's wealth and devotion. In the 9th century, the Pandyan king Sri Maharashi Vallabha invaded Sri Lanka and defeated Sena I, who was the ruler at that time. He took away his jewels, gold, and precious wealth of the temple, especially a huge golden statue of Buddha. The reason why the golds, and precious wealth was taken from the temple is to ruin, to destroy the structure which showcase a losing side king, valor, and glory. That is why the monuments which were constructed by the king were always being targeted by the other person who's attacking him. But later, when King Sena's one dynasty's successor, that is Sena II, attacked the Pandyan king in out of the revenge, to seek revenge, he took the Buddha statue back from Madurai just to show that he is not weak and he has claimed what he was his originally. In 11th century, the other example is of the Chola king, Rajendra I. He built a Shiva temple and filled it with the things he seized from the defeated ruler. The reason why he kept the things over there in this temple is to showcase his subject, that how powerful and mighty he is. And the kings or the rulers he has defeated, they all are in the bow of him, in front of him. The reason? He have made it as a display that whosoever has stood against him has always been defeated. A statue of Ganesha, Durga, Nandi statue from the eastern Chalukya, and the image of Bhairava from the Kalinga of Odisha, and the statue of Kali from the Palas of Bengal were all seized and captured by the Chola king Rajendra I and kept in the Shiva temple, which he built to showcase his power and wealth to his subject, to demonstrate that how powerful, mighty, and strong ruler he is. Not just that, other Muslim rulers also used to do it. Like, for example, Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni. He raided India during the 11th century and looted many temples, out of which the most famous loot was the temple of Somnath in Gujarat. You all know that the temple of Somnath has been invaded many times. With this, I'm concluding the part 1 of the chapter number 5, Rulers and Building. We'll discuss the further topic of the chapter in the next video. Thank you.